Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our King George and Queen Elizabeth Stakes preview. I mean, more commonly just known as the King George. That is taking place this Saturday from Ascot. We are previewing just after the 5-day decks were made. Currently 8 horses declared. Unlikely that all of them will potentially go, as highlighted by the bookmakers, cutting down to 2 places each way. But still looks a deeply fascinating contest. Rematch from Epsom and the Coronation Cup. Then we've got Rebels Romance, who is highly touted or highly successful. I think he's a multi-millionaire. Kalpana representing the mares. Lambourn looks fairly unlikely to run. Whirl looks unlikely, but would be very interesting at 16s were she to run. Green Impact also highly unlikely at 33s and continuous at 100s. Probably a good place to start and would be the ground. So I've just heard a clap of thunder. I'm in London, not too far away from Ascot. You're even closer. Irrelevant, really, to what you're about to tell us about the ground, the forecast, and what the Ascot clerk of the course has to say.
The first point I'll make, hello everyone, is that talking about just calling it the King George, I think we have to say at this time of year we can call it the King George, because I can count about 5, can't I, in various tracks and various codes over the years. So but this is the King George of the middle distance, midsummer. So we're recording this on Monday, and this morning we got the really valuable information. Turf Tracks produced their first clear data for the ground for the first time since Friday, and it was better than I thought it would be. We've had a lot of rain, and places like Sandown down the road from me have got a fair bit of soft on the going, but Ascot is good all over. And my immediate thinking was, with not much rain forecast, this means G/F in some form come Saturday. But I just would like to read out to you what the official thing says from the clerk of the course, Chris Stickles, as reported in the Racing Post a couple of hours ago. Occasional showers forecast to Ascot through to Wednesday, with a further 5 mil to 8 mil estimated, but conditions are expected to be dry for racing on Friday and Saturday. If the forecast proves correct, clerk of the course Chris Stickles said he would anticipate the ground remaining at its description of good for the weekend, but that is subject to change. Now, I'd be interested to know what you think, but I scratch my head with that and think, 5 to 8 mil over the next 3 days is very little, and they'll lose more through either transpiration when the sun comes out, because it is out every so often, and then it'll dry significantly on Friday and Saturday. So I was amazed that he would say, expecting it to remain what it is now, good for the weekend, if we have a predominantly dry week. Well, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I expect good to firm ground, and was confused further by sort of Kalpana's connections coming out today and saying we're very excited for almost a softer ground looking King George, and I'm not really sure where they're getting that read from. So I mean, it's going to be hot and sunny Friday, Saturday. Ascot trains notoriously well. The amount of rain we've had recently, there's going to be quite a high water table or low water table, whichever one means that it's not going to spend much time in the water and will dry quickly. So it will potentially suit Calandagan, as we're probably going to touch on. It will suit Rebels Romance. So question marks therefore over Jan Breughel and Kalpana. But should we get straight into it? And we'll start with the favourite. Calandagan actually came second to Jan Breughel in the Coronation Cup. Looks fairly well held. Looked like a classic case of a Galileo in the form of Jan Breughel, just out battling, wanting to win more than Calandagan. Are there more excuses for him than that?
Definitely. No, I mean, it did turn into a war on Jan Breughel. There was a thou shalt not pass mentality, which was impressive, but there are a couple of buts there. The first is ground related. there was give in the going, and I think over this trip, that's something that helps Jan Breughel. And if there's no soft in the going come Saturday, that changes it and tips the scales in favour of the French raider. The other thing is, I would encourage anyone to look back and watch the last 2 furlongs of that race on the Racing Post, or indeed anywhere else. Calandagan hangs quite clearly. The first time Barcelona asked him to go past, he runs almost into Jan Bruggel's backside, on the camber. And then again, as he's trying to overtake, he comes close he actually draws parallel. They're pretty much absolutely neck and neck. And then the horse is again hanging down the track. I think Jan Breughel coped with that Epsom better than Calandagan. And just the extra point there is that Calandagan is a proper Ascot course specialist. He was a thumping 6-length winner here at the Royal Meeting in 2024. And he was narrowly touched off in the Champion Stakes. He absolutely fine on this track. Jan Breughel, by contrast, has never run at Ascot.
Yeah, agreed. But obviously it's factual. But Calandagan, Coolmore are presumably going to make this a really, really tough test of stamina. Calandagan obviously runs over both 10 and 12 furlongs. How do you think his stamina is at 12 furlongs? Do you think it can be tested, or do you think it's pretty robust?
I think it's pretty robust. But the third point, which I forgot to make about the Coronation Cup, was that came after a 62-day layoff for Calandagan. After a Middle East venture, they will have let it down and built him back up. I don't think there's any problem with this chap's stamina at all. But the point about, then the Ballydoyle cohort wanting to make this a war that will really test the stamina. They've got to get those tactics just right, haven't they? I think back to the Prince of Wales. Continuous, same pacemaker, same jockey. I don't think either the jockey or that horse is a natural pacemaker, although it seemed to have worked in the Coronation Cup. They've got to get it right, and if they get it wrong either side, it's not going to help their chances. So I don't really fear for Calandagan's stamina if the ground is riding fast. We should just make the final point that anything can happen to the weather in 5 days. Who knows? Whether thunderstorms in the week.
Okay, and that one victory in France has alleviated all concerns that he's a bit soft mentally.
The win last time out in the Grand Prix de Saint-Cloud was absolutely stunning. He absolutely made mincemeat by multiple lengths of Aventure, second in last season's Arc de Triomphe, and Vermeil, who had won both her 2 starts of the season. And behind that, at multiple lengths between each competitor, were 3 Group 1 winners in Junker, Iracine, and Goliath. So Goliath may have had an excuse, but the time was fantastic. This is now a horse at the absolute top of his game, and he is emphatically the right favourite for me.
Okay. Jan Breughel, we've also touched on quite a lot. For me, he is also a horse very much at the top of his game. He is unbeaten, barring his comeback this season, where he went on to improve probably about 25 pounds for a second start, reposition himself at one of the key figures in the middle distance cohort. And he's a Galileo. If he hadn't run in the St. Ledger, I wonder how much higher touted he'd be than Aidan O'Brien, 1 mile 4, essentially unbeaten. And he's done it on all grounds, and he's battled incredibly toughly, and clearly has a bit of class. He won over 10 furlongs as a 3-year-old, beating Trust Your Instinct. And then he beat Bellum Justum on good ground at Goodwood before going on to win the Ledger. And he just potentially is a bit unexposed, I think. And they'll be able to dictate the tactics, and I think Jan Breughel will be able to put up a decent fight to Calandagan. It'll be interesting to follow how the betting goes, but I wouldn't be so dismissive of him as being so far below Calandagan, and Calandagan deserving clear favouritism. I think it's maybe a bit closer than that. But anything you'd like to add on Jan Breughel?
A couple of points. You're right. I mean, he's the less exposed horse. He's had less runs. He's only had two runs as a 4-year-old. What is striking, though, about his pattern of time form figures is how what he did last time in the Coronation Cup was was a significant leap forward over anything he'd done before in terms of figures. He was a really good horse before, with still potential well, but not a great horse. Last time out, if he can repeat that kind of figure and number, then we are talking about a great horse. And yes, he's a serious competitor. As I say, there's something about the ground that I think turns the table for this since Ledger winner down at 12 furlongs. You say he's done it on all types of ground. Yes, he beat Bellum Justum at Goodwood on Good to Firm. Bellum Justum, what price would he be in this race? He's been very disappointing since. So yeah, look, I mean, he's going to have Ryan Moore on board. And the last time out was an absolutely fantastic performance. If he can step forward again, then he's a massive, massive threat. Just on the betting front, I mean, for those of, people have a choice between a 15-8 or a 2-1 at the moment. So essentially, they're the same price.
Yeah.
I wonder how this market is going to go, because you must think that come the day, Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien will take a ton of money. I mean, is it a deal that Calandagan goes off favourite? I don't think it is at all.
I would lean towards Calandagan going off his favourite, because I think he's the sexier horse. He had an illustrious career as a 3-year-old, off the back of that good win, as you say, and I think it has that French mystery about him, the Aga Khan silks. I think he will wrongly go off favourite. I just want to go back on the point that you were making about Jan Breugel's time form ratings, and I think the justification for that is potentially his style of racing is to only ever be half a length in front. So only when he's afforded the opportunities to run against these good horses is he afforded the opportunity to get these good ratings. So I think he's certainly still unexposed from a rating point of view, and that will be the potential disservice to the price he goes off. And maybe if there is a big disparity, it'll be it is fascinating, because Aidan O'Brien, Ryan Moore, they're winning everything at the minute. So
one thing I would say, the Ryan Moore business, I mean, if the market were deciding on jockeys alone, I mean, they'd be 10-1 and 1-10, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Ryan Moore, most people's idea of by far the best jockey currently plying his trade. I hate to be rude about anyone, but Michael Barcelona is certainly my least favourite of the top jockeys, supposedly top jockeys out there. He's exaggerated waiting tactics, absolutely dreadful at the weekend on Ridari and the Messidor over at Chantilly. Zaragana, he's managed to get her beat, or almost beat, got things back in the steward's room. But the only thing that allays my fears with Barcelona here is the one thing that he's most likely to get wrong in races is wait get too far back and make too late a move. In fact, if they're going to make it into a war of a pace, that might serve him well.
Yeah, I think it's necessary, but again, you're relying on something happening for the jockey. So you're adding prices on, you're adding percentage of not winning on there. So the price should potentially be bigger for Calandagan and Jan Breughel, with the world's slickest operation behind Jan Breughel. But yeah, conscious of the fact that we have spoken at length about the front two in the market. Anything more you want to add before we go to sort of the second battle within the betting, which is Kalpana at 5s and Rebels Romance at 13-2. So Kalpana, course and distance winner, probably close to her best run was in the Fillies and Mares at Ascot on Champions Day last year. This year, she's run respectably in the Tattersalls Gold Cup and then came second to Whirl in the Pretty Body Stakes. She, I think, is a victim of the same connections as Blue Stocking, and people are all hoping and expecting that she's going to be able to replicate the sort of season that Blue Stocking had. Not sure that's going to be the pace with Kalpana. Blue Stocking, I think, came second in this race last year. Can you see Kalpana replicating that?
I think it's a really good point about the Blue Stocking. I think, she did this one, Kalpana. I think she was favourite for the Arc at the start of the season, wasn't it? After Blue Stocking wins the Arc, okay, here's the next Juddmonte filly, look great on Champions Day. But let's just take it back and let them work out what this Champions Day business. I mean, that was fillies and mares only. and it was her beloved soft ground.
Yeah.
If you start picking apart the form, the second horse, Wingspan, was decent behind that. Oh dear. And as Wingspan, now she beat Wingspan by a couple of lengths that day. Wingspan then went over to the Breeders' Cup and was the best part of 5 lengths behind Rebels Romance. So fine, you taking one form line and extrapolating is probably a dubious thing to do. But I'm not convinced. Wasn't convinced that she was that good last season. Always had that reputation. So what we've got to go on this season is 2 runs and 2 defeats. Now you could make an excuse like White Birch, sort of victims in running perhaps in the Tattersalls Gold Cup. But then, she had every chance to beat Whirl and couldn't. Fine, giving weight, but that's what 4-year-olds do to 3-year-olds. And Whirl was well on top by the end of that. So maybe coming back to 12 furlongs helps. Maybe there won't be F in the going, but I doubt it. But for me, I'm not so enamoured with this one. I think she's got it all to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Echo all your thoughts there on Kalpana. Would have Rebels Romance probably shorter of the two with the CV he's managed to build, the consistency that he shows. If it was 8 runners, we put him up when it was 3 places this morning at 13-2 each way. If 8 runners magically holds, are you keen on Rebels Romance each way still?
Yeah. I mean, if there were, again, if for some extraordinary reason, 8 places hold, 8 horses hold their ground, you get your 3rd place. But actually, I'm less keen now than I was in anti-post position, because if 8 horses hold their ground, that means Whirl is in here. And she's a real player. And suddenly, what looked like a fairly comfortable each-way play looks a bit more dicey. So, no, I don't like Rebels Romance so much. And it wouldn't surprise me, though, if he were to finish second. I've come round on this horse in the last... Most people have come round to this horse over the last 4 or 5 years as he's run Group 1, I think 7 Group 1s. I've always been a bit sniffy and like, okay, they've been Group 1s anywhere but the heartland of top turf racing, Ireland, Britain, France, Japan. It's been the other places got its Group 1s, and the 2 American Breeders' Cups, the fields weren't great. It'd been a bit sniffy, but I just look at what he did last time, which got a great time figure. It was really impressive to the eye. He easily saw off Al Refa, who has come back to run absolutely superbly since. As I say, the time was great. And last year's King George, he was placed when a lot went against him. He was ridden much closer to that ferocious pace. He went to war with Luxembourg, saw him off. He went to war with Auguste Rodin, saw him off. And then, only in the last sort of half furlong was he picked up by the closers. I think Rebels Romance is absolutely his best at Ascot. And despite being, was he 7, 8? I think he's 7, isn't he?
Yeah.
Despite being 7 years old, his last race was arguably as good as anything he's done before. I don't see why he wouldn't run his race again. And everything for me comes down to the going. If it's G with GS, no, I don't want him. But I think it's going to be G with GF, and that's just perfect for Rebels Romance. And as I say, if Jan Breughel, for whatever reason, if they get the pace wrong, the tactics wrong, or indeed he's just not so comfortable on that quick surface, being a ledger winner on softer ground, I could see Rebels Romance coming second. I can't put him past Calandagan.
Yeah, I think he'd be more likely to come second to Jan Breughel than to Calandagan, because I suspect they're going to be ridden quite a similar way, Rebels Romance and Jan Breughel. So a tactical disaster for Coolmore would potentially result in a tactical disaster for Godolphin.
But don't you think, William Buick, talking of good and bad jockeys, one of the best, absolutely the best steers out there. Don't you think connections will be aware that Ballydoyle will have to make this a massive stamina test, and they don't want to be sucked into it from the outset? I don't know.
I think he does want to be sucked into a stamina test. He won over 1 mile 6 this year. They were thinking about making him a cup horse. He's a strong stayer at the trip. I think he'll be ridden up on the pace and look to out-battle the horses like Calandagan and Jan Breughel. I think that's his best chance at winning. And he was ridden, as we just touched on, far too close to the pace last year, which ended up being to their detriment. And I think they'll hope for similar tactics, but they won't be going as fast. Last year there was an issue with the ground, wasn't there? It was advertised as good to firm, but it was actually racing more like good to softs. So again, that puts another tick in his ground versatility box. So yeah,
really, he ran really well last year.
Yeah, no, agreed. I would be close to saying he was probably the best horse in the race if it wasn't Blue Stocking ahead of him. Goliath, would have had Rebels Romans down as a better horse than him.
But Blue Stocking,
Yeah.
even more than the Goliath, she was the one who was ridden right out back.
Yeah.
Rebels Rose was sort of third, Goliath fifth, sixth. She was like plumb last for most of the way.
Yeah.
That race flow just worked perfectly for her. And as you say, the ground wasn't quite as described.
Okay, so yeah, both admirers of Rebels Romance, but not enough to put him up at 13-2, 2 places at the minute. Again, want to follow the price. Kalpana being the sexy horse, if she starts taking money, it will potentially be at the expense of Rebels Romance. So Lambourn, we're not really going to touch on. Doesn't look like he's going to run, and even if he did run, we don't think he'd be placing. Whirl 16s, she is a line of blue on odds checker, which is enticing. I wonder if they'd use her as a pacemaker instead of continuous. If that would be the sole reason that she ends up running.
That's interesting. So that's added a third theory of why Whirl is still in here.
Yeah.
So my theory number one is that they're only going to run Jan Breughel, and they have no intention of running Lambourn. And I concur with what you say. I don't think Lambourn's going to run. He's a sea of pink on odds checker, and I doubt his ability to place. Even if they did run him, a 3/4 length beating of serious contender doesn't do it. But if Jan Breughel tweaks something, I still don't think they want to run Lambourn, but they might run her instead. So I think she is the reserve for Jan Breughel. That's my theory. The alternative is that actually, I hadn't thought your idea that she might be employed as a better pacemaker than continuous, or can take Breughel further. But the other possibility is, hang on, I've lost my thoughts here. Where were we? Whirl. Why would she run? I'm blank. I had my other theory and now it's gone.
I think you've gone through all three. She made all at York, made all at Epsom. Continuous, the shines come off him so far, so he's almost pitch black. And I think, would he be respected as a pacemaker still, or would they be quite happy just letting him go off in front? Whereas with Whirl, having already beat Kalpana, you'd want to keep you'd be a lot more respectful.
Finally into this senile mind, the third reason has actually come back into my mind. Namely, is it possible that the lads have had a cheeky little last minute thinking, and having said this one's going to the Nassau all along, maybe they're thinking, no, let's have two proper bows, strings to this bow, Jan up front and Whirl not up front, to give us a different horse in a different pace scenario. I mean, you're right, she could make the running in the sense that she was sacrificed effectively the Oaks, wasn't she, for Minnie Hawk?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she was. Yeah, they didn't ride her out to the
if she were ridden to her merits here, given that she almost beat Minnie Hawk when not run to her merits, she's a serious player, and if they were to run her, that 16s wouldn't last. She'd come right down in the pen. The whole betting would be changed. Whole betting and the whole perception of value of the other horses as their prices change. So it's just a question of whether one of the lads, or probably Magnia, has had a glint in his eye and said, you know what, boys, let's chuck in Whirl, let's have a change of mind. But I don't think, probably not, but it makes me nervous.
It does. In the interest of longevity of this podcast and preview having any value, hopefully she doesn't turn up, because this is fairly based on the proviso that she doesn't go. So yeah, we won't be able to give you anything insightful were she to run, and we're sort of hoping that she doesn't. So yeah, fingers crossed Whirl doesn't turn up. Green Impact is also not going to turn up, and then that leaves Continuous at hundreds. Not really worth mentioning, as he will be used as a pacemaker, and hopefully he's able to make the pace this time.
Yeah, poor old Continuous, not sacrificed as a pacemaker, and not even terribly good at that. Just a quick word on Green Impact, though. So this is interesting. Sorry, I might be behind the curve on this one. Did you get the impression that Green Impact would not run?
Yeah, I thought I'd heard that he had other targets, but I thought I'd heard that from you. So if you don't think
Right.
that,
From me, maybe I'm thinking back to sort of the Irish Derby or something like that. I mean, if Mark Chan and Connections have left this one in at the 5-day stage, I presume they're serious. But you look through the form, and I think everyone's hoping that because this horse beat Delacroix twice as a 2-year-old, that sort of that superstardom that Delacroix is not far off achieving might in some way rub off this season. But this season, it hasn't been good, and when stepped up to 12 furlongs for the first time last time in the Irish Derby, actually regressed off its previous run, and absolutely no idea that this is really tilting at windmills for me. I can't understand Green Impact.
yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to go. Just seeing a clip from an interview with Jessica Harrington where she says that him and Hottest Hell are going to be off to Germany and America respectively for the next starts.
Okay, right. Interesting. Why waste your 5-day money then? Or maybe you don't waste any more money between 5 and 2 days. Having never owned a race course, I don't know.
Yeah. More useful to know. Any of you are racehorse owners, please do let us know. Cool. Well, that's everyone then, isn't it? Go on.
Sorry, just want to say, so a wrap of our positions and betting, of course, and people are aware, not everyone's aware, that we put up Calandagan. How long would that have been ago? Would that have been about 3 weeks ago now?
3 10-3, was it? 10-3, I think.
Absolutely excellent bet at 10-3, and we still think that. So I come to you now. I get the sense that you're leaning more Jan Breughel and Calandagan, or you've got more time for that. Presumably, you don't think 15-8 is a great price for Calandagan now.
I think it's probably. I think 2-1 for each of them is probably about right. I think the question marks over the jockey are probably what would push them from 15-8 out to 2-1 for me.
Yeah, or the other argument, sort of playing devil's advocate, is best part of 2-1 not still a good price on the best middle distance turf horse in the world?
Yeah, well, we don't know. That could be Jan Breughel though. Okay.
On one run, he's run exceptionally. Yeah, Calandagan has run exceptionally on his last 5 runs. So I think there's a bit of reliability there. But yeah no, I'm strongly
exceptionally into second on 4 of the 5 of those.
This is also true. But at those prices, I have a very, very strong leaning one way rather than the other.
Yeah.
Even though it's not 10-3.
Are you still
Yeah.
Yes, we're still broadcasting. Sorry, that was my wife.
It's right. That's probably good place to end. Daniel clearly in demand. Cool. Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Please do let us know who you are interested in for the King George and why. Good to hear from you always in the comments. And it's good to do a podcast again. A couple of weeks off with a pretty poor preview-worthy race this last weekend. So yeah, nice to be back. Goodbye.